This is
This is Joe Cole.
This is Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and you're listening to the
London is Blue podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. I am your fourth choice host with the most, Nick, joined by Abdullah and Jessy yet again to break down Chelsea's first match back at Kingsmeadow of the FA WSL season, a 4-0 win against Everton, back on track. Look, there's a lot that we're going to go through today, a lot of stats, a lot of insight, but the three main things that we want to discuss are going to be the dominant Chelsea performance that we saw earlier this morning. It was certainly a return to normalcy if you watched it all the last couple of years. The delightful return of Kerrby. They both contributed in a big way. And then we're going to ask some really thoughtful questions. Look, I mean, we know that last week's results against Arsenal was not typical of this team. So we want to understand a little bit more about the tactical changes that Emma Hayes made ahead of this match and how she might move forward with this team, because it's really going to be a competitive league this season. So all that being said, we always start off, always and forever, with a 3-word match review. We got a handful of doozies this morning. There are a lot of people in the States in our Discord who are up with me at 6:30 in the morning watching this game, because we care. And look, there were a handful here. I'm going to pass it over to Abdullah to read a couple of the better ones out here. Abdullah, please take the floor on the three-word match review.
All right. So, there's a few good ones, but I think I'd pick out Everton of Trouble. I think that was quite
Everton of Trouble is great.
Yeah, it's quite a handful there. The Cuthbert Gambit I quite liked, and then this one was a personal favorite. Regularly scheduled programming. I feel like that's apt for what we're about to discuss for the next hour or so.
Absolutely. Amongst the others, Techie Tiger with Sam Kerr double. That's easy pickings, my friend. You know that. And then welcome back, Kingsmeadow. I think we all are a massive fan that there are actual supporters in the stands from Ghana Gazina. We have, let's see what else, just a couple of other ones here. SP Beal, old homie from the other shows, Wounded Lion Strikes. I like that a lot. And then, look, I think we got to get into ours, guys, because, we can't leave the people wanting more. Abdullah, what's yours?
I think for me, it's all systems go. I mean, everything just looked pretty much on point today. I mean, there were a couple of moments which we'll get into, but otherwise, I think it just felt like, the season has truly started now, and all systems are go.
For me, I went with Hayes' revenge train. Sometimes I feel like Emma Hayes needs a vendetta or to be angry about something to really hit peak Chelsea, peak Hayes. That's what happened with Arsenal last week, and now we're rolling out the station.
You kind of predicted that too. To be fair, you thought this might be a.
It's classic Emma.
It might be a revenge game if you were. So I went very much in a similar vein from Tana, and I said normal service resumed. I mean, this felt comprehensive. It felt easy for a lot of the game, and it was just dominant. And this is supposed to be a team that we've talked about, if you've listened, that could be 4th or 5th or maybe push for a top 3 this year, depending on who the talent is that Everton gets to show up on a week-to-week basis. So the fact that it was so comprehensive just felt like a little bit of normalcy, which was nice, especially after last week. So let's get into the details of the match. Obviously, we played Everton. It was on Saturday, September 12th in the Women's Super League. Location, Kingsmeadow. Thank God we're back. I think that was great to see the fans out. Would have liked to see it packed a little bit more to the rafters, but we'll work on that in future weeks. Scoreline, Chelsea 4, Everton 0. Dominant performance with goals from Kerrby, 2 from Sam Kerr, one of those being an absolute gift. And then Beth England with a goal that I'm not sure she knew a whole lot about, but we'll take it anyway. Let's pass it over to Jessy. Let's go through the lineup and potentially a couple of tweaks and changes from last week.
Yeah, so, we stuck with what we know in goal, and Katrin Berger, classic. And we kept the same back three, Millie Bright, Jess Carter, and Magda Eriksson, but with a little change there. Last week we saw Jess Carter playing as the right-sided centre-back and Millie in the middle. We swapped those around today. And also a new face at right wing back. Erin Cuthbert came in, taking Niamh Charles's place there. But we kept Guru Wrighton on the left. And then another change in midfield. We swapped Loipot's out for Sophie Ingle, but she stayed paired with Ji So Yun. And then it was the real return of our classic front three up top. We had Fran Kirby, Sam Kerr, and Pernilla Harder.
Substitutes: Musovic, Nuven, Loipols, England, Fleming, Charles, Spence, Anderson, and Fox, with appearances from Anderson, Spence, Fleming, England, and Nuven. So lots to go on there. The 5 subs rule is great. We're going to get to see some of the depth really shine through this season, which is awesome. Abdullah, let's look at the stats from this game, because I do think that it shows a little bit of the story and the dominance that took place.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, Chelsea had 27 shots and compared to Everton's 5, though they only had 6 on target, which I think is both clinical and not clinical, in the sense that they had 6 shots on target and they scored 4 goals from them, but then they had 27 shots, which means that they probably could have been a little bit more accurate. But anyway, we'll get onto that. 57% possession, 528 passes, 83% pass accuracy, 6 fouls, 1 yellow card, 2 offsides, and about 6 corners compared to Everton's 1 corner. And I mean, Everton just, I don't know. I mean, like, that was it was a crazy performance. I mean, XG was all telling, where Chelsea had an XG of 2.39, so they smashed that, in terms of the actual goal scored. And Everton just had an XG of 0.2. I don't remember the last time I've seen a team register such a low expected goals. I mean, that's just unfathomable. And for a team like this, it's insane. And kind of just to round it off, Chelsea have scored at least 1 in each of their last 53 WSL matches, netting 163 goals across this run. And this is now 23 games longer than the previous record run, 30 consecutive games by Arsenal, ending in October 2020. So, I mean, that's an insane record of number of goals, in consecutive games. It's crazy.
We've been telling you guys on this show for a long time, if you want to be entertained by a Chelsea football team, this is a team that is guaranteed to give you entertainment week in and week out. The men's team is looking good right now, don't get me wrong, but they have not always provided such entertainment as the women's team do. Look, Jessy, they were just absolutely on fire today. The stats kind of prove out the story. We'll get into some of the specifics here in a second, but just give me your overview. What stands out from those stats to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably what stands out is those 27 shots with only 6 on target. I think for all that Chelsea looked great today, there was a lot of evidence that there were still some cobwebs to be blown off by some of the attacking players today. But yeah, Everton gave them a hefty helping hand, but Chelsea never really looked phased at all. And it's just great to see. We're used to this team feeling confident. We expect that stat about scoring in 53 consecutive games is just bonkers, because you do go into every game knowing that the opposition are going to have to score at least 2 to beat you, which is an amazing position to be in. But Everton have been pitched as one of the better teams. I know they got thrashed last week at Man City, but it was as much an opportunity for them to kind of show what they were made as it was for us today. And it's just great that we looked so assured. Absolutely.
And I think before we get into our first ad break and kind of get into all the specifics, the one thing that we did want to cover off on, and I think it's just the best part of football right now for me, is just seeing fans back in the stands. The first, real crowd for a competitive match at Kingsmeadow, about 2,500. I want to, again, I would love to see that closer to the max 4,000. But it was so great, Abdullah, to get the real support behind the team. It was, I think Jessy mentioned in our season preview, it was eerie at times watching this amazing team play in front of silence last year, and to hear the chants and the support and, see all the families that were there and everything was just fantastic.
No, absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, it it's a whole different ball game once you got fans inside. I mean, like, you could feel the presence of the fans. You can feel like they were, egging the team to go on. And I think, I think an extra goal or two just came from the fact that there were fans present, and usually when you're playing in an empty stadium, if things are tense, you don't have that extra bit of push, like I say, the 12th man, and that's what the crowd is, especially at home. So, I mean, 2,500 is a good start considering it's the first game back. And I think we should start seeing more and more people come in, but especially when we get into the Champions League rounds, I think that'll be, the place is going to go off the hook. So I think it'll be amazing.
It's interesting too, Jessy. I mean, obviously, everyone's favorite power couple, Magda and Pernilla, were tweeting about the atmosphere today. But I do think there are a lot of players in this team that respond to crowd noise and to support. And I think Erin Cuthbert's one of those players who, even when she, was in a tough defensive challenge, was trying to do tricks and stuff to get out of it, which I think is a part of the ethos of supporting this team.
Yeah, and 100%. Like, Chelsea have by far and away the best atmosphere in the WSL. Like, I know I'm biased, but it's just true. Kingsmeadow, when it's full, even if it's half full today, it's such an amazing ground, such amazing noise. And yeah, there are so many players in this team who feed off it. And it's great to see players like Pernilla Harder, who haven't had the opportunity to play in front of those fans yet, get to like really experience it. Because for me, that's what makes Chelsea women specifically as a club really stand out, across Europe in terms of how intensely and well supported it is. And it's just amazing to see those players getting to like really appreciate that again.
And the club have done a phenomenal job with the ground as well. I think in making it kind of an atmospheric ground, even though it's not the biggest stadium in the world, it's still really unique. And I was just very, very pleased for everyone who got to go today. But if you're in the area and you're not going to watch this team when they're at home, you're crazy. So that is my one reprimand for all you folks who were not there today. But that's it. We're going to take a quick ad break, and then we will be right back. Okay, a couple of reminders. This podcast is going to happen every week, so join us. That's the thing that you need to do. We're really excited about increasing our women's coverage this year and making sure that this team gets the support it absolutely deserves. So if you could rate and review an Apple Podcast, give a shout out to the women's team. Call me some name if you want. That's totally fine with me. Whatever gets you there and gets it done is good. And then if you are interested in kind of deepening your relationship with this community that exists around the Chelsea women's team, our Patreon's a wonderful place to do that. There are dedicated threads. There are people who are up with me at 6:30 this morning watching this game and going crazy for the team. And so the dedication is real. So if you're interested in that, you can do that too. But we got to get into a little bit of the redemption story, right, Abdullah? I mean, this team suffered a bit of a setback last week. They got punched in the mouth by a team that is going to fight them all the way to the end of the season, most likely. So the fact that Emma Hayes did not go out and dramatically change everything, but made some tweaks, I think is telling about her trust in these players and her trust in the system, that it is going to be the right system, even if it's not necessarily perfect quite yet.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, I think we said it in last week's episode that, she came back and said, I'm not going to change the system because of one loss, albeit against Arsenal. And, it's about the process. And obviously she stuck with it. She's made a few changes. Obviously, I think she understood that, maybe getting Carter in the middle, probably work better with Millie Bright, who's probably a little bit more positionally better than Carter, out there. But and I think overall, I think the defense looked a little bit better. But there's one thing to point out in the fact that, and I think Jessy tweeted this around the game, was that the defense will look great against most teams fourth and below, which is going to be there just because of the quality of the league and the team that is there. So how do you then figure out whether this is the best three or there needs to be more changes when the team that you're playing up against, who's supposedly the fourth best in the league, is conceding 8 goals in 2 games? That's not a good sign of a test. However, we can take positives from it. Like we said, I think Carter was great centrally. She made a few good interceptions. And I think the two wider center backs, I think, were given a little bit more license to kind of step up and kind of play in that area, whether it was defending or whether it was passing or whether it was doing any one of those sort of things. So I think the defense worked well. And I think even the two wing backs, which was an odd pairing for me when I first saw the lineup, but ultimately, if I think for this kind of game, it just worked out perfectly. Though there were moments in between where I think they did get caught out a little bit.
I mean, pick up on that point, Jessy. I mean, obviously, when we talked last week, Chelsea starts the season is not easy by any means, right? I mean, this was supposed to be a more stern test than Everton have given us in recent years, and you obviously made the tweet, so you can talk about it with your own words. But I mean, maybe just discuss what you expected this game to be, and maybe what there's still a little bit left to be desired from that Everton team, probably.
Yeah, I think I felt like Everton would still have the opportunity to put Chelsea under pressure, maybe in the same way that Arsenal did. They've got a number of very good wide players who can move very quickly into spaces. And there were points, especially when Tony Duggan came in, where you maybe saw that kind of quick interplay with Anna Anvegard or Claire Emsley look like it was maybe going to catch Chelsea out. So I don't think it was a total write-off in like testing out the defence. I do think it was, testament to how well Chelsea were able to keep control of the ball in particular. And, when we were looking at the Arsenal game last week, 2 of the goals Chelsea conceded came from quick balls from within Arsenal's own half. And that's how quickly they were able to rip us open. And I just felt like we were a lot more compact. It didn't feel like those spaces were there, even if Everton were maybe able to play those balls, which they were going to struggle with, to be fair. So it is always going to be tricky. It is a perennial problem. How do you, as I tweeted, stress test a defence against better opposition when you've only got the opportunity to play those teams? I mean, ultimately, you just have to hope that your defence gets better as it grows in confidence throughout the season, as players get used to their position. Something we really picked out in that Arsenal game was, players who hadn't played necessarily in this back three before, players who were playing at wing back who had not played at wing back before. Those players will improve even against lesser teams in doing that. And I think you've just got to ultimately hope that's enough. My one concern around the back three is that we lose, I think, a lot of Magda Eriksson's distribution ability when she's kind of shunted out to left centre-back. In the second half, I thought we saw her get on the ball more. It felt like there was a conscious effort from Hayes to maybe shift the defence across a bit more, tilt it more to the right, so Magda came more central. But I think in the first half, that was a real loss. And when you saw us getting penned back quite a lot, we really benefited from high turnovers and Everton's mistakes. But there were points where we were just penned back, passing between that back five. And I think that is maybe an issue there as well.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to discuss here, and I'm gonna pass it right back to you. I mean, we have, in 2 games shown 2 different sets of 3, right? Where Carter was out on the right, and then she played centrally today, and I think looked a lot better. Now, she didn't have nearly the threat that Miedema and Mead possessed in this game to face, but it showed a different side of her game that I think, the distribution was right. And I think Millie seemed a lot more comfortable kind of attacking out on the wing where Cuthbert was as well, and being able to provide support there. But your point about Magda is one that I think is often overlooked, a part of her game, which is distribution. Is there a scenario, is there a back three where she could play that sweeper role and become the distributor? Or is, just because she's left-footed primarily, that this is, the left side is primarily going to be the place where she ends up in a back three?
Yeah, I think it's partially that. And I think it's also because she is such a good 1v1 defender. And I think that Carter Bright switch came from, the stuff that Carter is really good at is kind of reading the game, intercepting, making blocks, that kind of stuff. And I think she is very, very good at that, but I don't think she is as good as the 1v1 stuff. We saw her last week basically get sat down by Miedema. Whereas that's something that Millie Bright's very good at and Magda Eriksson's very good at. They're both very good at using their bodies to show attackers to where they want them to go, to push them into, lower opportunity places. Even with Beth Mead's goal, the way Beth Mead was being shown onto her left foot. That's why Anne-Katrin Berger was saying after the game, I didn't realise you had a left foot. Like, that's a fantastic strike from Beth Mead. But in some ways, that's a great example of what you should be doing if you've been put in that situation. So I think that's the problem. That's why we'll always see Magda on that left side, because she'll be there when there's the gap between the left wing back to do that 1v1 defending against whoever is the right winger out there. But I do think it's a shame. But I did think it was really noticeable that in the first half there was a tilt that was rectified a bit more. So I think it is something that you can make more of within the game to kind of shift stuff up. I think the problem is that naturally, if you have Guru Wrighton as your left wing back, she pushes up more, which tilts everyone around the other way. Compared to Erin Cuthbert, who's on your right side. If we play John Anderson at left wing back, I think you can start to move it back the other way, and Magda starts to come tilted back into a more central position, and then I think you start to solve that distribution problem.
Abdullah, do you agree with that? I mean, I wanted to kind of pass it to you on the wing backs because we had a little bit of a different configuration, but I think that both things kind of tie together, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it kind of depends on what Hayes wants from her back five, essentially, right? Do you want, I think that will come with the opposition, but do you want more of your wing backs, both wing backs to be pushing forward and becoming almost like a five up front? Or do you then want more distribution, say from a Magda Eriksson kind of, facilitating her move into a more central area? I think it comes to that. I think against Everton, I think they knew that Everton would probably, after last week, want to sit back a little bit more than they would want to push forward. Maybe, yes, they would try and high press with Anvegard and whoever else, Amsley and whoever else they started up front. But I think that's why we saw Cuthbert and Wrighton start, just so that, because Hayes kind of knew, all right, if they are going to break, they're probably going to do it deeper rather than higher up than what Arsenal did. So I think it depends on the opposition. I'm pretty sure if it comes up against Man City, I don't think it's going to be as attacking. And I think that's where Jesse's point about Magda maybe coming in and kind of controlling possession in those deeper areas where it's going to be more dangerous will come more into play. And then that's what possibly Jan Anderson comes in, that shift towards the right-hand side with the Neem Charles or Erin Cuthbert. I think that's where it could potentially come in. But kind of on the point of the two wing backs today, I kind of liked it. I think Cuthbert, I think we've said here, she had 4 tackles, no other Chelsea player won more. And that's kind of where my whole idea of playing Cuthbert as, like, whether she's playing a right wing back or defensive midfield, is just like this destroyer. Like we saw throughout the game, whether she was high up, whether she was deeper centrally, she was just in there making tackles, winning it back, and kind of giving Chelsea those turnovers, at different areas of the pitch. And I feel like there's nobody else on the team that can do that. She's possibly the only that sort of profile in the squad. And so I think she's going to be playing a huge role this season, regardless of whether she's playing a right wing back, central midfield, number 10. And I think Hayes is realizing that the fact that when she got moved to right wing back against Arsenal and made such a huge impact, had that cross with the assist, and obviously she scored, I think it'll be there. Obviously, I don't know. I still worry about her positioning discipline. I think that's still something that comes into play. And I think if she is going to be playing against the bigger side as more of a destroying threat, then I think she needs to learn how to probably read her positioning and when she has to go up and when she has to stay back. But I think there is a making of a sort of half wing back, half midfielder, almost like a Joao Cancelo kind of type thing that Pep does, where he just kind of plays this like half back, inverted fullback. And maybe Erin Cuthbert becomes that answer over there.
Jessy, do you agree? I mean, I think the point that I would make on Cuthbert is I think she's by far been Chelsea's best player through these first 2 games, at least in my eyes. I think she came out and looked very intense today. Like she was out there to make some stuff happen. Maybe not a traditional right wing back, but has played in those wing positions before and probably has some more comfortability with that. Maybe instead of where Wrighton is on the other side. But is your thought that this is a role that she can kind of make her own and own throughout the season?
I'm not sure personally. I thought she looked very good today, although there were points where I thought it was obvious that she wasn't a natural defender. That's normal. I get the impression that she's an incredibly intelligent player. You know, whatever she's told her job is to do within a team, she always, you know, does that to aplomb. And I think I've said before that I think that's almost been to her her career's detriment at points, because she's almost so versatile. She doesn't really ever nail down one position. I think my only worry with it as a long-term view is that she isn't a defender, you know, and I think we tend to see, like, from the best wing backs, even if they're more attacking oriented, they still tend to be like originally defenders. And I think also there's an element of, if it is a really long-term solution, it would be a bit of a waste of what her talents are. You know, we see for that fourth goal, like the ferocity of that shot that she unleashed, you know.
Smashed it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And then obviously, you know, Beth just gets to shin it in. But that, to me, like, really summed up why you want Erin in and around the box. And in games like today, and in games against a large number of WSL opposition, that's going to be fine, because your wing-backs are going to be able to do that, because there's more than enough cover that it doesn't have to matter. But on a long-term view, against the very top teams, I still think it's not quite the right fit.
Yeah, no, I know. I 100% agree with that. I don't think it's an every single game top team, no team solution. I think it's something that if you want your wing backs to attack, like we said, if you want both of them to push forward, and then you want but someone with a little bit of bite, then yeah, Erin Cuthbert's your answer. I think until Mielda comes back, it's just going to be rotation between the wing backs until she comes back, and then obviously she has to get back into rhythm and form and everything. But yeah, no, I 100% agree with Jessy. Where up front, where when she's near the box and kind of playing around there, unbelievable, an excellent player. And I think that's where we'll see her more than likely, at least if she is going to be playing in the bigger games, kind of use her as this pressing forward. But I think, yeah, if you're playing against teams who are like Everton or Brighton or someone who's going to sit back, then you've got someone there who can break up play and give you an attacking threat.
Well, speaking of attacking threats, there were a couple of players today that added some real verve to the team. So look, Kerrby, Fran Kirby, and Sam Kerr back in the fold today. These two are just absurdly impressive. If you watch any level of football, you just understand the telepathy between them is crazy. Fran Kirby with an absolute dime of a shot to start the scoring today, off the post and in, and it, she meant every inch of that one. And then a little bit of rust for Sam Kerr, but gets a couple of goals, right? And one's a really, really scrappy turnover and play in a really terrible spot from Everton. That is a gift. But we've seen Chelsea strikers in the past have no luck, so I'd rather they have all the luck personally. And then she puts the second one in, a great header from a right and cross later in the match that, it kind of shows her, dusting herself off a little bit and getting back in the game. So I guess I don't know where you guys want to start or if you have a player that you want to take, but I'll pass it over to Jessy. Take one of the two.
Yeah, I'll talk about Fran because I just thought she was absolutely amazing today. I think in a team where there's been a number of players who've looked like they're just taking while to get into their rhythm, and like Kerr was one of them. We'll talk about her more in a bit, I think, but Harder, as much as I thought she had a really good performance today, she still felt like another. But Kerrby is just consistently by far and away the best player on the pitch. It doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to matter how many minutes she has in her legs. What her touch is just always on point. There was a flick on she did about 15 minutes in where like the ball gets played over the top and she just like back heel flicks it on for like Kerr to run onto, and I'm like, how are you doing this? The first goal was, maybe a bit fortunate, but just a classic. It feels like a classic Kerrby low XG shot that finds its way in and ends up looking amazing because she takes those chances and she puts herself into those positions, and it just makes me it still makes me so happy to see her back in a Chelsea shirt, back playing and just running this team. And that honestly, that for me, there is no one in the WSL who comes close to what Fran offers on the pitch.
What about Sam, Abdullah? I mean, this is a person who did come pretty close last year in terms of output, but I think we all, again, both levels of expectation for these players is about as high as you can get, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they were probably the best strike duo. If we just look at it in terms of goals and assists, and their kind of interchange and their play together was unbelievable last season. I think we're going to see more of that now, and kind of Kerrby is obviously in a league of her own, but Sam Kerr isn't, one of the best strikers in the world, for no reason. She scored 20 plus goals last year, if I'm remembering correctly, and she's been consistently doing that throughout her career. So I think the kind of telepathy and the connection that they both have is unbelievable. And yes, maybe it's going to take Sam Kerr a little bit longer to kind of get back into it. I think she's had a little bit of a longer holiday than the rest of them, but I think once she's back into it, I think it'll be unbelievable. And one more point is, it's great to see that if one or two of them aren't at like the top level, it's always the third one that just kind of fills in that gap. And when the other one's not there, someone's always filling in the that performance level and making it as high as possible, which is great to see. And it kind of between themselves puts the pressure off each of them to say that, all right, even if I don't have the best game in the world, I know that either Fran or Pernilla will do it, or Sam and Fran will do it, or Pernilla and Sam will do it. So I think that in itself is a great kind of thing to have.
And a couple of points. A Sam Kerr holiday is a holiday that will likely set anybody back a little ways based on
the
her
dream
party.
holiday. Some might say.
Yeah, so some might say that.
And it was her birthday week this week, so maybe it's
sure
just been a big couple of weeks for her, hasn't it?
No fun was had whatsoever. She is quite as a church mouse, as we all know. So, and the second point is one that's really important, and we'll get into this third player here in a second. If you're facing Chelsea, it is the rarest of occasions where all three of those front players are not performing, right? I mean, like. You go in hoping that two of them aren't. That's like the maximum hope that you can have. But as you just illustrated, Abdullah, I think it's incredibly important to say that they just fire at all times. And if one doesn't, then the other likely helps them get back into it with the way that they pass to each other. So it's pretty impressive. I do want to throw in a quick note from Tom Gary, who obviously covers the league and is someone we've referenced before. Emma Hayes on the stat sheet on the shots and shots on target perspective said, for the amount of shots that we had, it shouldn't be 4-0. We need to be more clinical. I'm happier with the clean sheet. And then he says high standards. Yeah. And by the way, she's right. I mean, there's no reason that this shouldn't have been 6, 7, 8 today. I mean, there were plenty of chances that just didn't quite connect, and for whatever reason, I'm sure they're going to sort that out. Quick stat line on Fran, obviously 1 goal, a casual 9 key passes, 4 recoveries, 100% dribble success, 100% duels won. So she's not just attacking, she's getting into the mixer a little bit. She's just getting started. But I know I want to pass it to Abdullah's person. This is the person that he has quoted the most in the last couple of weeks, Pernilla Harder. His entry for player of the match, which we'll get to in a little bit. And I think someone who, while she was not in the goals today, was super effective. So she's playing off the left wing. She's a lot more involved. She had an XG of 0.86, which was her highest ever, and didn't get one, which is a little weird, but that's okay. Talk about Pernilla Harder, Abdullah, and Wax Poetic, my friend.
Oh, man, like it was a crazy game. I think this was just, last week after, she scored last week. Obviously, she scored her first goal of the season last week, but I think her performance wasn't as good as an impactful as everybody thought it would be. And I think today she just almost had a point to prove. And, just kind of like Jessy said at the top of the show, like, Hayes' revenge train. Like this was Pernilla Harder was on a mission. She just went out there from minute one, was like, I'm gonna boss this game, I'm gonna take it by the horns, and I'm gonna make everything happen. And just the way she kind of then just kind of use the spaces. And then you could then start seeing while it was, again, rusty, the interchange and the chemistry between those three players up front was unbelievable. And I think there were moments in the first half where she was unplayable. You could not get near. I think those in the first 20 minutes where she had that mazy run into the box and she just dribbled past 2-3 players like they weren't there. And then obviously the shot was off target. And I think that's where Hayes' kind of annoyance with the team's attacking play of like not being clinical enough. Like they had everything before that. But if this is Pernille Harder finding her groove and kind of getting into the season, then I think we're in for a massive season from her. And I think this is the season where I think she really is going to show her true form. I mean, she was good last year, but I think we're going to see more from her in terms of goals, in terms of assists, because I think this new 3 at the back system, if it is going to be persisted with, is going to facilitate and allow this front 3 to just flourish even more than it did before, because I think it means that they're going to start playing with 2 number 10s rather than playing in like this 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3, rather a little bit more spaced. I think this kind of allows the 3 of them to be closer together and kind of play more passing exchanges and just kind of make use of spaces created by each other.
And to follow on that, and I'll pass it over to Jessy. She's been wonderful this preseason. It's her first preseason with the team. You have to remember that. That's what Emma Hayes is saying of Pernille. It's an adjustment. You can see that in the Everton players that have come in this year. Pernille is settled. Her role is clear. Her understanding of what this league is clear. I really look forward to seeing her best this year. What she doesn't get credit for is her work rate. The volume of running she does is unbelievable. So I think that kind of speaks to that point, Jessy, that she's not just someone who scores and doesn't do any other work on the field.
Yeah, definitely not. And I think that's something that was missed a lot in discussions of her last year, especially when she was playing in that, kind of tip of the diamond number 10 role behind Kerrby as a 2. But I think, she has actually been the biggest beneficiary of this switch to the back 3. And I think, when we've spoken about it, we've talked a lot about how it's been done perhaps because Chelsea don't have the fullbacks there. But I do think the way it allows Pernille Harder to play as kind of an inside left forward is a really crucial element of why Hayes has gone with it. And I think why Hayes will stick with it, because I think you just see today, like that stat about her having her highest XG that she'd had in a WSL game. She felt so much closer to Kerr and Kerrby than she did in any game last year. And the way that she was able to still drift across. And what I felt was really noticeable is if you look at Harder's shot map from last year, lots of the shots she takes are from the edge of the penalty area. And she's great from shooting around there. But today what I felt was really noticeable, and her XG kind of speaks to this, is she was taking those shots from inside the area, from around the 6-yard box. And that's great. That's when you're really adding like another genuine goal threat to Kerr and Kerrby. And I think that freedom that inside left role offers her is going to be really crucial and is really exciting. I think that was like what stood out to me the most today, I think, from a tactical perspective at least, of how much more involved she looked, not just in the attacking build-up play, but in, when Fran was, say, picking up the ball on the right, Sam was making a run through the middle and Pernille would be coming across from the left, and it felt like Fran then had 2 options, whereas last season it just felt like because Pernille Harder was a little bit further back, it was only ever the through ball to Sam. And 9 times out of 10, Fran's going to make that through ball to Sam anyway. But if you give her the second option, and if you make defenders think there's a second option rather than just tracking Sam Kerr, that's scary. That's really, really scary.
Well, and that second option is one of the best players in the world. So, it's like the embarrassment of riches really comes into play when you consider that. It's funny. I also thought, I don't know if you guys saw this as well. The runs were not just those in the goal scoring kind of moves, but I think also the way that her and Guro Reiten were a little bit more connected today made sense to me. It seemed a lot more fluid. It seemed like they knew where the other was going to be. When Everton would occasionally get a little bit of a press on, they were able to kind of break out of it and make little space for each other, which I thought was good because it was one of the noticeable things from the Arsenal match that Guro Reiten is not necessarily a left wing back by by nature, right? So she's playing a little bit of a different role, and it allowed a lot more space for her to cross the ball today too. We obviously led to Kerr's second goal, but you saw that Harder was taking defenders away and freeing up space for that wand of a left foot to put in some really great balls. And so, I mean, there's a lot of really. I know we opened the show talking about the adjustments defensively and like all those stuff that needs to happen there for it to be perfect. But there's a lot of really positive stuff that's happening on the other end of the pitch as well. And again, if you're looking at this team and understanding that Cuthbert and Wrighton were really contributing today, like it's just massive for this team. Is there anything else that you guys want to cover off on from the attack that I missed?
No, I think that's pretty much kind of everything. I mean, it was just, overall, just a splendid performance going forward, and I think we can probably see this front five, if you want to call it, including the wing backs. I think that can flourish against most teams, as the middle and bottom of the league.
I think one thing I would just add is that it was really nice to see Beth come off the bench and get a goal. I know she didn't necessarily know much about it, but we know she had a tough season last year, but she was actually still like incredibly productive compared to a number of forwards in the league. And I think it's just great to have someone who, I think we're realistic that her role is now as backup striker. I don't think we're going to see Emma experiment with playing all four the way she did at points last season. But, I mean, that's an amazing backup striker to have on the bench. It's been great to see her get an England call up. I just hope it gives her, confidence that when she is coming on for those 15, 20 minutes, when she does get starts, probably in the, Conti Cup or whatever, that she can really show, what she's still got and really offer. I think she's got a lot to offer this team, even in that slightly different backup role.
There are a lot of matches to play. I'm sure she's going to get her time. And again, a little bit of luck goes a long way. There are a couple of lucky goals today, but I mean, for players that, a tinge of luck can make all the difference in the world, I think that's really great. Let's take a look at a couple of other changes, and then obviously we're going to take a look at the league table and the schedule looking ahead. But the last one that I think I wanted to touch on was Ingle for Leupolz. Who wants to take this one? I thought there was a lot more stability in the midfield today, just based on the performance.
Yeah. I'm there. Surprisingly, it was, I don't know if it was surprisingly or unsurprisingly, but, Ingle coming in just kind of almost settled the team, I think. While I think she is the most defensively minded player that Chelsea have in the midfield. But I think she just offered so much more ball control in those deeper areas. And I think her positioning was excellent. There were a couple of moments in the first half and probably near the beginning of the game when Everton had a little bit of a foothold where they were getting players in behind. But I think besides those couple of points, it was more so the fact that I think they were able to keep possession better in those deeper areas. I think while Everton were pressing, I think Ingle along with G allowed for better ball control, better ball possession and recycling in those areas, which I think contributed to the defensive solidarity of when they were playing, because obviously against Arsenal, they were just not able to keep a hold of the ball properly and kind of keep it moving. But in this game, it was like, yes, there were some dangerous players going forward for Everton. And, Emsley had a good 15, 20 minutes. And Regard was pressing a lot in the beginning. But I think Ingle just had such a masterful control of the ball that I think it just kind of, everyone around her was just like, all right, we're at ease. Ingle has the ball. We know she's not going to lose it. And then they could kind of, play their natural game almost.
Yeah, I think one thing that I also thought was interesting was, and we saw this in bits against Arsenal last week, was that actually G was the one who was dropping back as the deeper of the two. And you saw Ingle going and kind of contributing to that high press. And I thought that was quite, an interesting way. We've talked, in the past about how, Ji So-yun's role might change at Chelsea, she's not getting any younger. You've got Harder playing in very similar positions at points. And I thought it was quite interesting to see Ingle maybe offering robuster defensive options slightly higher up the pitch, but with G there to offer that creativity actually to that back line. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that develops between all three of those players, G, Ingle and Leupolz, over the season.
Excellent points. Look, guys, we had a lot of excellent performances today. There is just no doubt about that. So the player of the match in our Twitter poll that we put out was hotly contested in the WhatsApp group before we got there. So look, in fourth place, unfortunately, G with 9.4% didn't quite get the love that she probably deserved from this match. Cuthbert similarly with 20.7%. Harder with 23.3%. Sam Kerr runs away with our player of the match on Twitter, 46.6%. Is Sam Kerr any one of our top performers from this match? Go, Abdullah.
Yeah, I kind of want to say no, because I feel like in any other game, 2 goals earns you a man of the match performance, or player of the match performance. But I think there were so many good performances in this game that were just better overall that I don't think I think Kerr is almost unlucky to be missing out on player of the match when we had so many other good performances overall. You could literally pick out like 5-6 players and just say, you could win it, you could win it, you could win it, you could win it.
So you went with Pernilla Harder as yours, right? That would have been your vote?
Yeah, I went with Pernilla Harder. I think, for a player who's just coming back into, she scored a goal last week, but not the greatest performance. But this week, I think she was outstanding. Like I said, there were parts where she was absolutely unplayable. And I think this left-sided number 10 position for me is not only benefiting her to be better. I think whoever plays left wing back, whether it's Anderson, whether it's Wrighton, is going to have a great time, because she's going to create so much space for these players to go wide and provide a different crossing angle that, she's benefiting 2-3 players and not only herself. And usually in these situations, you're like, well, when you're benefiting other players, you kind of get locked out of it. But she's equally having a better time in this 10 role than she is, at the same time. So for me, Pernilla Harder takes it all the way.
Yeah, I have to agree. I thought Harder was the standout player today. I think just because, as I kind of touched on, the way I feel like her roles changed a bit this season, and I think you saw her really enjoying that, and really taking on that freedom. I think on another day she could easily have scored a hat-trick from the chance she created, but I think last season it didn't even feel like those chances were available to her where she was. And I just think it's really exciting to see her getting on the ball, creating that space, pulling defenders out of position. And I think it really spoke to the fact that she's going to have a great season.
I went with Erin Cuthbert. I loved watching her out there today. I thought she was wonderful. Obviously, very unlucky to not score an absolute net ripper in kind of the final stages of the game. But her intensity and her willingness to make runs and to put in great crosses, I think, was noticeable. And I think it would have been hard to pick out a defender today. I think Jess Carter got a little bit overlooked because Everton didn't really offer a whole lot to the game, frankly. But she was also someone on the list, as well as Fran Kirby. So, look, we're going to read out the table here after a couple of weeks. We have to note that currently Manchester City are up on Spurs 1-0, I believe. So they're, if you had to place bets, there's probably a good chance they take the points out of that one. But as it stands right now, Brighton, just as we all predicted at the start of the season, Brighton are top of the table on 6 points with a +7 goal differential. Arsenal women squeaked one out today with a 4-0 win. So they're also on 6 points with a +5 goal diff. United continuing a strong start with a +4 goal differential on 6 points. And then in our grouping, City will likely advance. The Brighton now they're a +5, and they'll likely get those points today. But then it's Villa on 4 points with a +1 goal diff, and then Chelsea sitting in 6th right now with a +3 goal differential thanks to today's win and last week's loss. So Spurs, West Ham, Leicester, Birmingham City, Reading, and Everton Tough start for Everton, -8 goal differential. They're going to have to get those back in a hurry. But look, the thing that will likely piss us all off is that there's an international break coming up after 2 games of the season, which is a disaster across the board. But Chelsea, because we have a ton of talent in the team, will likely have a huge amount of players called up. We're a majority of the squad is going to be going away. England call-ups for Carter in England, which is great. Love to see that. And then after we get back, which is in a couple weeks' time, Sunday, September 26th, Manchester United away. So just no scheduling favors here, Jessy. What the hell is this?
Yeah, talk about a tough start to the season. I think, looking at Manchester United, I've been pretty impressed with how they've started the season. They've started better than I expected, although I will say I think they are still quite vulnerable defensively. I hope that we will have enough to take that win, and I think we probably will, but obviously we drew 1-1 there on the opener last season, and that was a bit of a frustrating game then, so I think it's always stressful. If I was going to say anyone who had as good fans Chelsea United, they go hard as well, to be fair. So a trip to the Lee Sports Village, it's geographically a nightmare to go to, and I think probably to play there as well.
Abdullah, what are your thoughts on the international break and then coming back? We have United and then a bunch of matches right in a row. So we have United on the 26th of September, Birmingham City in the FA Cup quarterfinal on the 29th, so just a couple days later. And that's away as well. And then we're back at home in the league against Brighton, top of the table, Brighton, on October 2nd, right after that. So what are your thoughts on the schedule?
That's a crazy schedule, considering in the span of a week we're playing 3 games and we're not even in the Christmas fixture list that we normally have through a game every 2 days. So it's a great start. But hey, this is the reason why Chelsea have such a deep squad with a lot of depth. And I think this is what we talked about in the season preview show, that depth needs to come more into play this year than it ever has, because things like this, where you're going to be playing a game every 2-3 days, and especially away trips for the first 2 games, I think it's imperative. So someone like a Beth England, who came on today, like Jessy said, gets a goal, confidence goes up. Someone like her could start, the FA Cup quarterfinal game, for example. You can have your Wrightons. Anderson can come back, and she's relatively fresh, having not played much club football. Then you've got Neem Charles still there, and you got Nguyen. It's a good chance to bet in Nguyen and won a competitive game. So from the start, so I think that squad depth and rotation is going to help a lot. And then who knows? I mean, we don't know, but maybe Lauren James is fit by that point and maybe able to play 15-20 minutes and just kind of get her season started with Chelsea.
Well, it's as we always do on our other shows, let's knock on wood for no injuries during the international break, because there's nothing that'll take the wind out of your sails more than that. But any final thoughts as we kind of wrap this one up? Obviously, an impressive day out for Chelsea. Kind of feels like a return to normalcy a little bit with fans at Kingsmeadow. Is there anybody else that you guys want to call out, or things that you want to look forward to?
I think for me today just reminded me of, Emma said it after in her pre-match, I think today, that everyone puts a lot of focus on the first game, but it's a long old season, and I think it was easy to kind of feel rubbish about losing to Arsenal on the opener, but seeing us really, it felt like back to normal, backfiring on all fronts. And, as we've kind of said, with what we feel is more to come, there were disappointing aspects of today that just made me feel like it was like getting into a nice WSL bath. I felt like before I was in a cold shower of the WSL, and now, I'm soaking and I'm feeling good.
Well, that's our graphic idea sorted then. Abdullah, what about you?
Yeah, no, I think it was overall. I think the attacking play, as we saw last season, is just in full flow, and it's only going to get better. And I think as this goes on, I think the team will just start getting better and better and better. My only concern is going to be on that midfield and defense, but I think with time, playing this system, playing through at the back, I think the defenders will start to get used to the movements and the patterns. And once that happens, I'm kind of excited to see how they adapt. And maybe, who knows, maybe playing an Ingle G or an Ingle Leupolz kind of double pivot in the middle is more than enough, because the back three can then just kind of compensate and cover for each other. One steps into midfield, it kind of becomes a three. So those tactical ideas could come into it once they get used to the system. And that's maybe playing 3 games in a week is only gonna help that, right? So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Trial by fire coming up for sure. We will have coverage for you throughout the international break. Don't you worry about that. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.